Good evening, everyone. Good evening, Big Johnny and National Housing Party weekly stream. Got myself, our awesome panel, Pat McGinnis there, and we've got Paul Rimmer, who's not got comfortable yet, but I'm sure he will be in a minute. And tonight we've got the mighty. I'm going to say mighty because you have to be mighty to take on Andy Burnham in Manchester. So we've got the mighty Nick Buckley. Good evening, Nick.
Good evening, gents. Thanks for inviting me on again.
No worries, honestly, all the time, mate, all the time. So Andy Burnham's been, we've had the Police and Crime Commissioner position for about 10 years. First person up was Tony Lloyd, as Nick was telling us. He was given the position for a couple of years. Then Andy Burnham won the next election, and that got extended. Well, he won the next election. He's won the next two elections. One of them was extended because we had COVID. And Andy Burnham is up for election again this year, ladies and gentlemen. And let me give you some of the gripe that we kick off about and mourn about is the Greater Manchester Police. And he's a crime commissioner. He came in 2017. Already in 2016, Greater Manchester Police have been given a warning for not properly recording 38,000 crimes. Then come along to 2018, they got another warning for 80,000 crimes. So that was under the watch of Andy Burnham's already been the mayor for a year, and he must have known very well what was coming up. And people are happy. He tried to bring in the council tax, which absolutely spurred people on social media making an 80,000 plus group against the council tax in Manchester, and all of a sudden he stepped down from implying that putting that in the region for whatever reason. There was a lot of stories behind it. There were stories like his wife was linked to one of the companies that did the cameras and stuff like that, shady back room deals. But again, Nick Buckley is running up against Andy Burnham. And Nick, is this your second running at the mayor position?
Yeah, I stood 4 years ago. Last time I stood for Reform UK because they were brand new. I was sat on my settee at home watching TV, watching Greater Manchester Police being put in special measures. And I found myself screaming at the TV, going, what is going on? I mean, I was a council manager, but based in police stations. I've trained police officers. I've created crime reduction projects. I've advised prime ministers how to do it across the country. So crime and disorder is a really big thing for me. And I'm shouting at the TV, thinking to myself, I need to do something. I need to stand. I need to set up a Facebook group. I need to campaign. And the next day, Richard Tice was on TV going, and we're setting up a new party called Reform. And I said to myself, you've not got a candidate to stand against Andy Burnham. So I tweeted Richard Tice, he phoned me up, and I decided I was going to stand for Reform. I never joined the party. I wasn't a Reform member. I've never been a member of any political party. It was a marriage of convenience because I wanted to stand. I didn't know what I was doing. They were a party and they helped fund my campaign, and that's why I stood for them last time. But then I learned last time I didn't want to stand for any party. I'm not a party person. I want to do things the way I want to do things. I don't want to be told this is your new policy on such or such a thing, because I'm big into free speech. No one's going to curtail my free speech. I'm going to tell people what I'm going to do, and then if it doesn't get done, there's only one person to blame, and that will be me, because the buck stops with me.
What about a team though, Nick? Don't you need a team around you?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, if I win, I'm going to need a fantastic team around me. And I've highlighted some people already. But
John Lawrence.
All those decisions that my team make will be signed off by me.
What about your campaigning team? Tell us about that.
Most of it at the moment's online, because unfortunately I've not managed to raise the money I wanted to raise to make it an all singing, all dancing campaign, but people are short of money. which is understandable. And the best thing about today, the best thing about running today is anyone can run, because you can do most your campaigning online, and that doesn't cost anything apart from time. 15 years ago, if you didn't have money, you couldn't even stand. There was no point. Where now you can stand and start getting a presence online. So a lot of things I'm doing, I'm doing daily videos, I'm doing lots of interviews, I'm doing lots of podcasts like this. I'm trying to get as much as I can on Talk TV and GB News. That's the sort of campaigning I'm doing at the moment. People keep asking me to deliver leaflets and to do this and do that. Greater Manchester's too big an area. There's 1.5 million homes. If you just worked out the cost of printing leaflets, that's, even I can't even afford to print the leaflets. They're man get them delivered. So I'm trying to run this campaign in a 21st century way, and I'm hoping some money will come in. And if you're watching this, you would donate a couple of quid. Go online, you'll find my account online to donate to this campaign. But if I can get some money, I need some decent advertisements, mainly with the Manchester Evening News. I've got to hit the mainstream press if I'm going to get the people who don't normally vote. That's how I'll win this election.
But I'll tell you something about campaigning, Nick. I stood for Mayor of Liverpool twice. I stood for Police Commissioner.
Yeah.
I was only for the English Democrats. We had no money. There was 5 of us in the campaign, and we got over 7,000 votes, and we truly rattled the Labour Party. It was like a mighty force on Merseyside. 7,000 members. And they had millions to campaign. How did it rattle them? One of my my forte was having a leaflet, going in the town centre, giving that leaflet to people and discussing the points of the leaflet. It was a good leaflet. It was just point. No big paragraphs with loads of writing in. Just 5-6 points, photo, the main points of my campaign, talking to people. Film that for your videos, put that online, and it has an impact. See, people, it's much more of an impact if it's natural, spontaneous, interacting with the public. You've got to have a face with the public. Like in other things, I was on the radio a lot, but and you've got to debate. I don't know, they're going to have debates in Manchester?
They will do, yeah, near the time.
Will you be invited to the debates?
Only the ones that don't matter.
What you've got to do in the debates is be truly outspoken.
Yeah.
I was ultra controversial. I got the headlines in the Echo. I got my face all over the media. It was that they were arguing over the issues that I raised. At the time, it was the Hillsborough cover-up. Now, I exposed Jane Kennedy for being part of Blair's scrutiny, which was a burial of the Hillsborough affair, and it was really controversial. I mean, the BBC blanked me. They really, the BBC, the local media, and the Labour Party work hand in glove. They're like a mafia. Now, you can't break into that mafia. The only way you can do it is having some sort of spontaneity, raising issues which really embarrass them. Now, I was looking at George Galloway's campaign in Rochdale, and obviously he's focusing in on the Gaza issue because it's a very emotional issue. You've got to capture people's emotions, and it's going to really impact especially the Asian community. But the wider community, I mean, people are really disgusted at Israel's behavior in the Gaza, the way they're abusing these kids. And it's way beyond any form of self-defense. It's way beyond any retribution for what happened in the border encroachment, which I believe was a setup anyway. But it's barbaric what Israel's doing, and people are very disturbed about that. Their emotions are really turned over by that. And if you take a strong stance on that, it will register with people. It will make a huge impact. And as you say, it's going to be interesting to see how George Galloway does in Rochdale, because he's gone out there. You see, he's making videos. He's putting his stuff online, but he's going out and making his videos on the street. A video on the street is worth 10 times a video in the studio, because people love the spontaneity of the street. Would you agree with that, Pat?
Yeah, in video important. I took part in the 2016 London mayoral elections. David Furnish for the BNP, and I learned quite a lot. And this is what I was going to ask Nick. In the London mayoral elections, I think you do have to pay quite a lot of money, but you get put in a booklet. You get amount of words, etc., your photo, what your policies are, whatever, and it is posted through every single voter's door. Do they not do that in Manchester?
Yeah,
Nick?
exactly the same in Manchester.
Oh, so you are getting a leaflet out to every door.
Yeah,
Technically.
well, that booklet will be going out to every door in Manchester.
Oh, right, that's excellent news. I didn't.
Yeah.
I was worried because you were saying you weren't going to do leaflets. I was getting a bit worried, but
Yeah.
you know, I'm looking at stats here. There's 2 million voters, around 2 million voters in the last election. Labour won it with nearly 500,000 votes.
Yeah.
Conservative second, 137,000 votes. Surprisingly, Green come third to 30,000 votes. And I'm
Students.
I'm quite impressed with your result. Nick, 18,000 with Reform UK.
Yeah.
And I wanted to ask you, what sort of support did they give you? Did they do an extra leaflet in Manchester area, the Greater Manchester area, or did they just do the booklet like you're going to do this time?
No, they bought some leaflets, and that's why I decided, unless I got a load of money, I wasn't doing leaflets again. The leaflets didn't work. Area is too big. They were, because we were brand new, the infrastructure really wasn't there. Most of their volunteers had left because the Brexit Party had been closed down. I was a little bit of a guinea pig. They were trying to ramp back up again. So they gave me some help and support, but they knew I wasn't going to win, so they didn't throw everything at it. I can't complain about the support I got from Reform.
So the booklet's going to go out, and there's going to be how many words do they give you on the booklet?
You get 2 pages, and you design what you want in those 2 pages. Excellent.
So, like 2 million voters are going to be getting a 2-page spread about your campaign, and you know, there's 1 million voters there who didn't vote, over 1 million last time. And like I said earlier, I was talking to you earlier. I've just been out canvassing tonight, and loads of people. They was even asking me, "Oh, have you got any candidates in King's Cross area?" And I was like, "No, not unless you know anyone." Yeah. So there are people desperate for change, and I think you represent that change, Nick, because you're anti-establishment, which is Lib Lad Con. And do you know who else is standing in this election?
Only 2 other candidates have put their names forward at the moment. So obviously Andy Burnham and the Tories have put someone up. But there will be a Green candidate. There will be a Lib Dem candidate, because they always stand. And there'll probably be 1 or 2 more small parties, maybe, or 1 or 2 independents.
Right.
How much is it to stand, Nick? How much is the deposit? It's a lot of money. I had to put $5,000 up for the police commissioner, and we got 6%. So we got the money back. But is the barrier 6%, 5%? Is it to get 5%. Your money back?
So it's $5,000.
Yes, that's going to take a big effort.
And it's $5,000 to put to get to the booklet. So you need $10,000 to stand.
Yeah, to get that $5,000 back, you're going to have to get around 50,000 votes at least.
Based on last time, about 40. So it depends how many
40,
people. It depends how many people turn up and vote.
So earlier on, we discussed hustings, and I have got an absolute big gripe against it. I've been to several, across Manchester. 2019 general election hustings in Cheetah Mill, Graham Stringer, the Labour Party, and all the other members, and I threw in the tough questions that, you know, they don't like answering. I said to him, the problem with Labour is they never deal with issues that arise in the communities. And my example was Oldham and the Oldham riots. The issues that the council never addressed were racial, housing and education. Never addressed them. We had the riots and it was blamed on the issue. So I said that to Graham Stringer, and he replied to me that I have got it on tape. Oh, the man from Oldham, yeah, we've learned our lessons and all that lot. A month later, it came out that Victoria Agoli had been failed by Greater Manchester Police and raped by over 100 men, reported missing 150 times to a care home. You couldn't believe how furious I was. But when I said that in that hustings, everybody agreed with me in the hustings. They all agreed that was Labour. I was talking about Labour. Now, in Oldham, in the 2019 general election hustings, there was a woman, Jamaican woman, West Indian woman called Amoy Lindon. She ran as an independent in the 2019 general election, Saddleworth area, Deborah Abrams ward. And when they had the hustings, she wasn't invited to the hustings. And I just think that's unfair. And I've looked through the hustings rules and they can get away with it. But, you know, I've said, Nick, I said, if they're not going to invite everyone to the hustings, I'm going to shut it down with people from the public, because it's just not fair. It's not democratic, and it's not being fair to the people of Oldham. And I mean, I don't care who comes to the hustings. I don't care what party, as long as they're in that hustings. It can be the most farthest right party in the world. And I want them at the hustings if they're signed up to run in the election. It's only fair, but they get away with it. So it's something I'm looking at in the future to make a change on it, make some kind of change through the Electoral Commission. All it takes is thinking about how undemocratic it is, and getting people to side with me, and petitions and stuff like that, and we can change the way it is. But them hustings are really one-sided, Nick, honestly, especially on the MP positions. I'm guessing it'll be the same with the Mayor and Crime Commissioner position, and any of them kind of positions. The hustings are just like shaded, you know. It's wrong, and we should be putting more in, making sure that we do get a democratic say and everybody is heard, no matter who they are. You know,
I think the issue with the hustings is they're always private organisations who organise the hustings, so nothing to do with political parties. So last time I got invited to hustings from the Modern Cities Institute, whoever they are, but I didn't get invited to the BBC hustings, who only had Labour and Tories. So there was only two people there. The ITV hustings only had Labour, Lib Dems and Greens. The Manchester News did the online hustings and split it into two. So the first hustings were the main parties. The second hustings a few days later were all the nobodies, including me. So they are very unfair. I can understand their point of view, which is we only want the main voices because you're not going to win anyway. So I get their point of view, but it isn't fair. Life's not fair. Politics isn't fair. So for me, it's about trying to win the battles I think I can win.
You know what? It's all about control, really, because the BBC, ITV, I mean, I remember when I stood in Liverpool and the BBC News was constantly featuring the Labour Party candidate.
Yeah.
In each election, they were given a platform, every news bulletin. The BBC is organised almost like a Labour Party propaganda machine. It's totally saturated with Labour Party supporters. So what I did, I went out to meet the people. Now, we've campaigned in local elections on Merseyside in May, and we've got another candidate coming up. So we've been campaigning for her. And going out and meeting the people, what we got, the feedback from the people is this: the politicians are too remote. The politicians are anonymous. The politicians cannot be reached. The politicians don't listen to us. The politicians are not interested in us. That's why it's so important that you bridge that gap. And the only way you can bridge that gap is going out and meeting people. Now, if you do go out and meet people, obviously, as you say, it's a massive city. You can only meet a tiny number of people, but you can film it. And once you can post that, Pat posted films of himself canvassing. I posted films. John did. We got up to 15, 20,000 views. This is just on Twitter. And you keep producing these small videos, you interaction with the public, what they've said to you, what you've learned from that, what are the policies that are important to the people. And you can interview the people as well on the street. A lot of people will consent to that. Yeah. And suddenly you build up tens of thousands of views. People get an interest in you and they say, look, this guy's on the street. Look, this guy's addressing the issue that matters to me. So it's you can use social media and it's a great vehicle, yeah, but use it as a way of bridging the gap between politicians and the people actually reconnecting. That's what the National Housing Party is about. We're about reconnecting from the grassroots people with the political process, because what we need in this country is not more politicians, but active citizens becoming politicians. Pat just talked there about, is there any candidates in King's Cross? Now you can say to people, look, do you want to be a candidate? All you'd have to do, we'll do the paperwork for you, put your name forward, and we'll support you. And a lot of people, if they see a vehicle, they'll say, yeah, okay, I'll do it. And we've got to re-engage the public with the political process again, because the public is excluded from the political process. The Labour Party runs their own agenda, and they don't listen to the public. It's not responsive to the public. They decide what they're going to do, and then they get a PR campaign. They don't listen. They're not accountable. They won't work in the public interest. They work in the interest of their constituency groups, which tend to be unions, public sector unions, or specific demographics, and they exclude most people. And we've got to say that explicitly. The Labour Party is about the exclusion of large sections of the British public and the empowering of especially minority groups, especially public sector unions, and they're abusing the democratic system. And the BBC is their propaganda tool. We have to wake people up to reality. Part of it, politics, is educating the public, because a lot of people are naive, but if you tell them the truth, they recognise it straight away.
Yeah, a lot of truth in that. The issue we've got is we have career politicians, and career politicians are only concerned about their career, just like you're concerned about your job, the next promotion, how to earn more money, how to get the next pay rise. That's all natural behaviour. And since we've now got a class of career politicians, that's all they worry about. They're not worried about the state of the country 10 years from now, 20. That's why we're the mess we're in now, because politicians 30 years ago didn't care about where we're going to be 30 years, which is today. And we do need more normal people entering politics. That's what the Labour Party used to be. There used to be miners sat in Parliament who were former miners, former police officers, former people from the army. It's all people now, university educated, who study politics at university, then start volunteering for an MP, then join a party, then get put in a safe seat. And they have no connection to the people. They have no connection to what the people want. It's all about them in their careers. And we've allowed this to happen through apathy, through people not voting. And in the mayor election in Greater Manchester, 2 out of every 3 people didn't even vote. That's why politicians now are concentrating on certain block votes, because they know if they can get 1 or 2 block votes, they win. So we forget about most people. They're irrelevant as long as I get 1 or 2 small block votes. So we need to start doing more. We need more people standing for your party as independents. And we need those average people sat in Parliament making decisions because they understand normal people, because their aunties, their uncles, how they were raised, not because we're taught something at university in a political class.
It's even worse than that, Nick. You've just used that term there, the political class. The Liberal ABCON are members of this political class, and this political class is totally committed to keeping the British public out of politics. It's committed to ignoring the British public. It doesn't matter what the British public wants. They've already decided amongst themselves what they're going to do. But the only means we have to hold them to account is through the electoral process. There's no other means. We have to really threaten them that if you don't listen to us, if you don't act in our interest instead of other interest, either globalist interest or minority interest, if you don't act in the interest of the wider British public, we will vote for somebody else. That's why I'm so glad you're standing, Nick, because you're giving people a choice. You're providing an alternative. You are a threat to the establishment. If you were a serious threat, if they thought you had a chance of actually winning them and denying them their power, they would now be demonizing you.
Yeah, of course.
They would, but they will try the best they can simply to ignore you. This is why you've got to break. When I stood in Liverpool, I had to smash my way into the political process. I went to the debates and I accused Jane Kennedy directly to her face of being a liar and a thief, and I provided the evidence for both those accusations, and she went into shock. The politicians went into shock. The audience went into shock, but it was all over the news media the next day, and it got me the impact to get thousands of votes. And sometimes you've just got to be outraged. You've got to speak the truth, because they are lying in their own pockets. They are criminals. They are liars, and you can expose them. They're doing it on a daily basis. They're actually almost habitual liars. They're almost habitual criminals. They lie in their own pocket. Jane Kennedy was claiming the maximum expenses every single day, and she was claiming for everything, like sort of bars of soap, pairs of stockings. It was obscene. And I exposed her. And then she claimed that she was speaking to represent the people. The Labour Party always present themselves as the voice of the people. Yet she had deliberately covered up over the Hillsborough tragedy and lied to do that in Parliament. She'd gone to meet Jack Straw and agreed to ask planted questions. It was so manipulative and phony, it was disgusting. And because I exposed her, she had to withdraw, like we're seeing with Angela Rayner now. She says she feels fearful to go on the street. Once people realise how cynical and sinister these politicians are, they really dislike them. But the BBC and the mainstream media will create an illusion that these are goodwill people and they're serving the public, and they're doing it out of the desire to serve the British people. And as you said, it's not that at all. They're building their own careers. They're cementing the power of the political class. It's like a ruling strata in society, a caste system, and we're excluded. Our interests are not catered for. We've got to wake up for this. We've got to wake the British people up, because there's a lot of dangers out there. There's a lot of dangers from this form of exclusion. They could easily take us into war.
I think it's worse than what you've just said. It's worse because the vast majority of these people, some of them will be feathering their own nest, some of them will be criminals, some of them will be whatever. But what they've all got in common is all of them hold us all in contempt. That they know better than us, that they know better than the vast majority of the British people. And they want to control our lives because they know better than us, because we're just idiots and we're ruining our lives. If only they could be in charge more of our lives, we would be happier, we would be richer, we'd be more content. It's that hypocrisy, it's that condescending attitude they have to the average person. That's even worse than being a criminal in my eyes.
Yeah, definitely. I just want to get a couple of things. So, I mean, in Greater Manchester, I've seen some of your posts. You're going to be holding like referendums, because I think Bolton want to go back to Lancashire, and people don't want them and Crime Commissioner's position. It should never have been made. And it does look like it's been made just to get people extra money who don't know nothing about the police. You do. Yeah. But Andy Burnham doesn't, Tracy Brading doesn't in Bradford. They've never worked with the police. Why can they be in them kind of positions? But you speak a lot about that democracy and these referendums.
No, exactly. So first of all, we have to understand why those positions were created. Why did the Tory government create police crime commissioners and city mayors? The answer is easy. So when things go wrong in those areas, the government won't be held accountable, because the government will just say, you've got a police crime commissioner, you've got a city region mayor, why are you blaming us in government? It was a way of deflecting blame away from national government. That's why we've got them. They've gone wrong. I mean, I was a supporter for the police crime commissioners. I thought that was a great idea. We could have somebody locally that we could point a finger at, and we could say, the police are failing in this area. I'm holding you accountable, and I'm going to vote you out of a job next election if you don't sort this out. And that's what I thought it'd be. But I was a bit naive 10 years ago. And what happened straight away was those positions became an extra layer of government for political people. So all the police crime commissioners became Labour police crime commissioners or Tory police crime commissioners. And they were just part of the same blob, the same problem. I think they should have been barred. People who represent the political party should have been barred for standing as police crime commissioners. We needed independence only. That was their big flaw. And then we talk about referendums. So when I stood 3 years ago, a lot of people said to me when I was canvassing and speaking to people, Nick, I don't want a mayor. I was never asked, did we want a mayor of Greater Manchester? It was forced upon us by George Osborne. I don't want it. It's an extra layer of government. I'm not voting for you. I like you, but I'm not voting for you. I'm voting for no one. There's a hole in our democracy in Greater Manchester. No one voted for this. Now, I'm not saying the mayor's a good thing or a bad thing. It'd be a good thing if I was in charge. But that's just me being biased. But I want to ask the people of Greater Manchester, do you want to keep this position or not? Because we've got to hold our democracy. The people need to tick it. And if they don't tick it, we need to get rid of it. So a referendum will be asked. And the Bolton thing is very similar. So Greater Manchester was created in 1974. Before 1974, Greater Manchester did not exist. It was part Lancashire, part Cheshire, and a little bit was Yorkshire. And it was created by the Tories never liked democracy. So they created Greater Manchester as a new administration area and forced 10 councils to work with each other. Now, what people don't understand about Lancashire, it's 1,000 years old. It has a memory. It has a history. It has a feeling. And some people belong to Lancashire. The older you are, the more you belong to Lancashire if you live in different parts of Greater Manchester. I want people to tick that box. If they stick with Greater Manchester, great, they had their say. And if they decide they want to leave, the people of Bolton decide they want to leave Greater Manchester and join Lancashire, then let them. It may be a bad idea for the people of Bolton to leave. It really might be a bad idea, but you know what? If it is a bad idea, I'd rather they make that bad idea and that bad choice than always allowing governments to make poor decisions for us that we can't change. So I want to give democracy back to the people.
You go back 50 years, 1974. I remember Lancashire. I mean, this is the thing about Liverpool. We were Lancastrians. We belonged to the Red Rose County. And it gave us a wider sort of identity. We weren't separate from Manchester. We were part of the same county as Manchester. When they brought in these divisions and split up Lancashire, it created the friction between Liverpool and Manchester, which soured the relationship. It was really negative. Now, I have always held on to the Red Rose County. I mean, in cricket, I support Lancashire. And I'll always support Lancashire clubs, Lancashire things, you know, places like Preston, Southport, where my family came from. They're important towns to me. I belong to the same county as them. I would love, and I think the people of our generation, Nick, would love to go back to the old Lancashire. We were a lot happier then. We were a lot better governed then. And things were a lot better then. Without, as you say, these layers of bureaucracy. You talked about the way the party system took over the police commissioners. The party system is the ruination of this nation. But the problem is, people are so used to voting for parties, they think that's the only way they can vote. We have to say to them, look, your vote is very powerful. If you turn away from the Lib Lab Con, you open up a new world of opportunity, a new world of choice, a new political class can emerge from the people. Instead of this political class, which you say is created at the universities and opposes itself on the rest of us, we could actually begin to reclaim our nation, the nation that was lost in 1974. Now, the reason Ted Heath cut up all the traditional counties was because he wanted to break up the United Kingdom and sell us out to the European Union. Hopefully, the European Union is gone, although I'm sure Labour would like to bring it back if they get power again. But we had, as you say, 1,000-year-old institutions like Lancashire, like the county system, which was, it worked well. The reason this country prospered and flowered and came to be the force it was across the whole globe was because of such institutions as the county system. I mean, it was integrated, Lancashire integrated and knitted together all the cities of this region, all the administrative aspects of this region were knitted together, and it worked well. Now, once they started breaking everything up and empowering bureaucrats and the political class, it started to go wrong. And really, it's like a counter-revolution. You're right to say this. I'd love to go back to 1974. I mean, that would really appeal to a lot of older people in Manchester now.
Yeah, no, absolutely. The older you are, the more you want to go back. And like I said, I'm not saying it's a good thing or a bad thing. I'm just saying that people need to be consulted and asked their opinion, and their vote matters. So if people in Greater Manchester want to break up Greater Manchester and go back to their old counties, well, who are we to say they shouldn't if the majority of people want that to happen? Politicians keep forgetting they're public servants. They're there to serve the will of the people. They're not our masters. They're not our overlords. We don't serve them. They serve us. And if our choices make their work harder and their life harder, well, so be it. If you don't like it, go get a job at Tesco's and don't be a civil servant anymore. Do what the people want you to do and instruct you to do as a civil servant.
Yeah. Let me get a question there, guys, if that's okay.
Yeah, go on, Pat.
Yeah, so interesting what you said about the mayoral position. It's a new thing, and I wasn't going to say this, right, but you kind of said it yourself. In our policies, we want to scrap this position because, as you know, in London, Sadiq Khan has been given, not just Sadiq Khan, whoever was mayor, as sweeping powers. They brought in 20 miles an hour speed limit all over London, and it's killing the city. And, LTF, ULEZ, he's had all this power, and we basically have a problem to remove it. But at the same time, we're going to support someone like yourself, and anyone who's watching, any of our supporters, please retweet all of Nick Buckley's stuff online for his Greater Manchester election campaign. Share. What other platforms are you on, Nick?
I'm on everything.
Yeah, so look out for Nick Buckley, share his stuff, promote his stuff. But the question I want to ask you, Nick, is could you tell the viewers what the top 3 issues you're campaigning on in the Greater Manchester election, and in order, what the priority one is, and is there any more than 3?
Yeah, so my top 3, the first one is crime, Greater Manchester Police. And the reason why it starts there is because the police and the fire service are the only 2 things the mayor is actually in control of. Everything else he only has an influence over, but he's the boss of the chief constable and the top fire guy. He's the boss. He can sack him. So he's in charge of the police service. So day one, I'll be having a meeting with the chief constable saying, you get on board or you're gone. It's as simple as that. And these are the changes I want to happen. I want no identity politics in Greater Manchester Police. So on day one, you need to disband the Black Officers Group, the LGBT Officers Group, the Muslim Officers Group. They all go day one. I want to look at recruitment. No more box ticking recruiting police officers. You'll be recruited on merit. I'm going to increase the fitness. I'm going to increase what officers have to be like to become a police officer. And if that means we have more male officers, so be it. If it means we have more white officers, so be it. I don't necessarily want more white officers or male officers, but if that's how it ends up being because we toughen the recruitment process, then I can live with that. I just want the best officers for the job. Then I'll be looking at promotion, because this is where the issues really start. Recruitment process in Greater Manchester Police promotes the most woke officers. So if you can come up at the promotion panel with a project that will influence and benefit black lesbians in wheelchairs with blue hair, with Maori face tattoos, you'll get promoted to sergeant or inspector or chief constable. So all those recruitment strategies all go. I'll be looking at patriotism, fitness, knowledge of the law. I've trained police officers. Hardly any police officer you ever meet knows more than 3 pieces of legislation because they don't need to know the law. That's how poor our police services come. And I'll be hammering criminals. I'll be ramping up stop and search. I'll be giving local communities a vote every year on if you want more stop and search in your neighbourhood. And if you want more, you get it. If you don't want more, fine. You don't get any more. You don't get punished. You just don't get any more. But when your children are being stabbed to death, Don't come complaining that the police are doing nothing about it, because you actually wanted less stop and search in your neighbourhood. So again, like the referendum things, I want to start putting the power back in the hands of people who live in these communities. It's not for me to dictate what you should have in your community. It's for you to vote on what you want in your community. And then as a public servant, it's down to me to deliver it. So police is my number one thing. If we
Can I just say one thing there, Nick?
Yeah.
When I stood for police commissioner in Liverpool, I went door to door around the toxic area, and I spoke to people of different ethnicities. Now, I was cautious about how they would respond to a tough line of policing, and they said to me, "You're not tough enough." He said, "We are the people who suffer because of this crime. We want a stronger police force. We want a more proactive police force. We believe in law and order." Now, the Labour Party, they'll present certain communities, like the black community or maybe the Asian community, as victims of policing, but that's not how the people in the communities see it. They see themselves as victims of crime, and they actually want strong policing. So it's all deception that the Labour Party are presenting. And you're right. What you said instinctively is what these people, when I found, went door to door, what they were actually saying to me, the ordinary people in the streets.
Yeah, I spent 10 years working for Manchester Council, and my team knocked on 30, 40,000 doors in Manchester, asking crime priorities. And the poorer the area, the more police they wanted to see, the more stop and search they wanted to see, the more CCTV cameras they wanted. The hardest job I have had working for Manchester Council was trying to remove CCTV cameras so I could put them in a new area to crack down on crime there. Because once you've got a CCTV camera in your area, you don't want it gone. So the poorer the area, the more you support police. The criminal families don't support the police. The race baiters don't support the police. But the average person does, because you live in a crime-infested area. So I know from personal experience that people are behind those policies to fix the police. Because it's easy being a middle-class, lovey-dovey, university-educated, living in the suburbs sort of person to criticise the police. Do you know why? You never need them, do you? You've got an amazing alarm system in your house. You've got private gates. You've got great locks. You're not going to get burgled. But when you live in Cheetham Hill and you live in Moss Side, or you live in Hume, where I was born and raised for the first part of my life, you want the police walking on your streets because they keep you safe and they keep your family safe. So crime's my number one thing. And it's where Andy Burnham, the Covent Mayor, is really vulnerable, because he doesn't care about crime. The first thing he did when he took this job, he gave responsibility for crime away. He gave it to his deputy. He gave the position of police and crime commissioner to his deputy. That says all about that man, about what he cares about priority. He'd rather paint buses yellow than keep our streets safe. So that's my number one priority. And I've got experience in this, 2 decades. I've advised 3 different prime ministers on crime reduction across the UK. So I'm an expert in this. I'm not somebody who knows a bit about it. I'm an expert. So that's the first one.
Love that.
The second one is rough sleeping. Rough sleeping's a national disgrace. We all should be ashamed of our country for the position we're in at the moment. 21st century UK, and we have fellow citizens living and dying on the streets, living in entries, lying in excrement, having rats running over them. And we call ourselves a civilized nation, a caring nation, a compassionate nation. And I'm talking about us on this panel. I'm talking about people listening. I'm talking about people in the streets. We all should be ashamed, because we've allowed this to happen through apathy, through not caring enough. So I'm going to end rough sleeping in Greater Manchester in 1 year. That's all it will take. I've been dealing with rough sleeping for 15 years, and I started when I worked at Manchester Council. The problem we have across the country, but let's just talk about Greater Manchester. The reason why we have an issue here, it's not accommodation, it's not money, it's a lack of a backbone to do the things we need to do to get people off the streets. And people will be saying, what do you mean? What do you mean no backbone? Of course people want to get people off the streets. Homelessness in the UK has now become a multi-billion-pound industry. People on amazing pensions working in homelessness. People are running businesses, running homeless projects, running hotels, running B&Bs. It's a business. Who do you know who works in a business and their number one aim is put themselves out of business? It doesn't happen. That's why we're not solving this. I'm going to set up a couple of hostels across Greater Manchester. Not many, 2 or 3, and they'll sleep about 12 each. And they're going to be empty warehouses with garden sheds inside. And each garden shed will be an independent living pod. So the day we find you on the street, you moved in there that day. No assessment. No, we'll find you next week. You move in that day. And once we get you in there, we can start working with you. They're not going to be great accommodation, because the better the accommodation we offer people, the more people come from all over the UK to Greater Manchester. Andy Burnham has got hundreds of people off the streets. So he has got people off the streets. It cost him billions, but he's done it. But every time he takes someone off the streets and puts them into a 1-bedroom flat or a 4-star hotel, guess what happens? Someone else turns up in Greater Manchester because they're going to get a 4-star hotel or a 1-bedroom flat. It's a never-ending conveyor belt of broken people coming to Greater Manchester because we treat them better than other cities do.
You know what I'd say there, Nick? I mean, I work in nightlife in Liverpool, and I come across a lot of the beggars, the homeless people. And I know, I speak to them. They all say, I'm getting a bungalow, I'm getting a garden back in front, my probation officer, my social worker. As you say, these people have got a vested interest in homelessness. They keep it going. They keep dangling this carrot, we're going to give you this. But what I found out with a lot of these homeless people is that they won't move into decent accommodation because they want to stay on the streets in order to beg, in order to get money for drug habits or whatever. So there has to be a strict law and order approach to homelessness as well, because it is being used.
No, I'm glad you raised that. That comes to my next point then. That's a perfect, valid point, that we have broken people on the streets and we can offer them good services, but they won't take them because they're taking far too many drugs. And drugs is far too easy to beg for the money for it and to buy it. That's a huge problem. How do we deal with that? Begging's illegal in the UK. It has been since 1826 or something. But we don't enforce it anymore now because we feel sorry for people. But you will not find anyone begging in Greater Manchester, if I'm mayor, within 3 or 4 months. Because if you're begging in Greater Manchester, you'll be moved on initially. And then if you sit down somewhere else, you'll be arrested. We will hassle you so much in Greater Manchester that there's no point coming in Greater Manchester to beg. That will stop other people across the UK coming to Greater Manchester. What's the point? I'm not allowed to beg. I earn no money. I can't buy loads of drugs. So they'll stop coming to Greater Manchester. Now, the benefit of that is if we can start getting people and reduce how much money they earn, that means they reduce how many drugs they take, which means they're in a better position to be worked with and are more likely to take the help and support on offer. But if we keep giving people free money and free drugs on the streets, you're perfectly correct. Most of the people won't take the help and support. Why would they? Because they're drug addicts and they're killing themselves on the streets. We need to end begging, and that's what I'm going to do in the first couple of months. And I know it can be done because 15 years ago, I used to run Manchester City Centre for the council in terms of reducing crime and disorder. So I ran the city centre. And at that point then, there was no begging in Manchester. If you go to Manchester now, you won't believe a word I'm saying now. Can you believe a time there was no begging in Manchester City Centre? And the reason why there was no begging is because you couldn't earn any money. The second you sat down, you got moved on. And if you carried on doing it, you'd be arrested. Now, they're the days we need to go back to, which was only 15 years ago.
You know what, Nick? And I want to talk about homelessness as well, because you talk about people on the street. But the real crisis of homelessness in this nation is overcrowding. What's happening is that when young people get together, even start a family, they're having to stay with their parents because of the lack of accommodation. And they're seeing people come in, so-called asylum seekers, all sorts of, well, 1 million people are coming into this country every year through immigration. They're getting priority for social housing. There is a desperate shortage of not only a desperate shortage of social housing, but a discrimination against the British people in the provision of social housing. I mean, more than half that social housing in London is given to foreigners, and yet we're in desperate need. People are living in cramped accommodation. When we go round campaigning local elections, we knock on doors and we say, look, there's 1 million people on the housing waiting list. And people say, well, my daughter's living upstairs with 2 kids in one room. She can't get any social housing. The rents in the private sector have gone through the roof. If she takes a house in the private sector, she wouldn't have any income. Her income would be destroyed. So people are trapped, and they're trapped in very unacceptable housing conditions, which even you just talked about 15 years ago. 10 years ago would have been unacceptable, but now they've been abandoned. The ordinary working class people in this country, as far as the housing situation is concerned, are being abandoned. There's no social housing being built, and when it is built, the British people in need are not getting it.
Yep, I agree with every word you've said. Unfortunately, as mayor, I have no impact on any of that. So therefore, I don't give it any thought at the moment. I'm just concentrating on the policies that I know I can implement and I know I can do, because I won't have time to start campaigning on something that only 10 Downing Street can really have an impact on. But everything you said then, perfectly correct. We've got a massive housing shortage. The quality of stock is going down because no one has to do repairs anymore now because someone's going to take it anyway. I've got friends who work for councils who go inspecting houses. Some of the stories they tell me are absolutely appalling. We're going back to the 70s. We're going back to rising damp. That's what we're going back to. We got rid of those abuse of people renting, especially single people as well. But we're back to those bad old days again because mainly because of immigration and because of our. It always comes down to government. Always comes down to government.
What was your third priority, Nick?
So my third priority is going to be, I call it my waste and incompetence watchdog. So I'm going to have a watchdog in the mayor's office who is, because I can't fix everything. I don't have the time. I don't have the influence. I won't have the money. I won't have the public will, not the public will. I won't have the will from the institutions. All 10 councils are going to hate me from day one. And if they don't hate me, it means I'm doing a poor job. People in the police are going to hate me. The fire service are going to hate me. The NHS are going to hate me. And that's fine, again, because I'm going to take that as a big thumbs up if they do. Because I want to highlight the waste and incompetence in all tax-funded services in Greater Manchester. Now, we all know they're incompetent, so I'm not just going to say, look at the street cleaning in Wigan, incompetent. Well, we all know that, so why am I talking about that? I want people reporting to me failing projects and naming top managers involved, because I'm going to start naming and shaming top civil servants and say, Joe Bloggs, this is the person in the NHS who just bought a £5 million computer program that doesn't work, and we're stuck with it. Pete Smith works for Oldham Council, and he has just bought 1 million paper clips by mistake, and we've had to pay for them. Now, some of these things sound funny, but these things go on, and I want to name people, so they're punished, because I want to give top politicians, top civil servants skin in the game. At the moment, it's not their money and they don't care. And do you know what? There's nothing you can do to me anyway, pal. Do you know what? I'll be putting your skin in the game. I'll be shaming you online. I'll be shaming you in the press. I'll be embarrassing you. I'll be forcing your bosses to take action. Otherwise, we'll be coming after them. And believe me, politicians who run these services eventually, when you go up the line, it's a politician at the top. When it comes to them being embarrassed and throwing a senior civil servant under the bus, they'll be throwing senior civil servants under the bus, believe me. That's how we're going to start getting change in some of our tax-funded services. I want to get to a stage where there's a meeting and all these civil servants are discussing a new project they're implementing, and one of them goes, do you know what? We better double check and triple check everything here, because if this goes wrong, that crazy mayor of ours will have our names in the Manchester Evening News, and I'm not prepared to have that done. Now that I will call a success. So that's my third priority, a waste and incompetence watchdog, just so the public know what we're doing with their tax money, because only they can change this by voting differently. So let's give them the information and name the people who are wasting their money and providing worse services and then complaining that I want more tax money off you. No, let's embarrass them. Let's put their skin in this game. And then maybe then we can start getting some better public services.
Yeah, I agree. I totally agree there. And I mean, the police and the councils are so unaccountable for everything that's going on. We've seen that in Oldham with the recent child sexual exploitation scandal. Rochdale, we've seen it in Rochdale. We've seen it across Greater Manchester, practically in every council. Box ticking. There's too many box tickers in them councils. They can't do the job properly, but obviously they tick a box because they're LGBT, some kind of minority or something like that, and it's wrong.
Every scandal should result in someone being fired. That's the minimum I ask for, because if I'm not saying it should be top of the council, I'm not saying it's the officer who made the mistake, but every case is different. Somewhere along the line, someone is responsible for that decision that's a scandal or not doing their job or the incompetence. Someone should be held accountable. And the only way we get better is we start sacking people. And that's what I'm going to do in Greater Manchester Police, by the way, is I'll be looking at every child grooming report we've ever done. I'm not going to commission any more reports. Waste of time. What's the point? You can change the title on every report and it's exactly the same bloody thing anyway. Lessons will be learned. We didn't share the information. This couldn't happen again. And it's all bollocks. So with Greater Manchester Police, I'll be reviewing every report they've done with solicitors, and any senior officer we can name in those reports who failed, I'll be looking at sacking that officer. And if they don't like it, they can take us to court and we'll have this out in court. They may win the court case, and I don't mind, because that will send a message around the country that if you fail our children, you lose your job. It's not. Is that so unreasonable as a message?
No, it isn't. I can give you a good example. Rochdale, and to do with Cyril Smith and No View, and Richard Parnell, the then mayor, after the investigation found out that he lied and he did know about the abuse. Nothing happened to him, and he went working with Joe Anderson in Liverpool, underneath Joe Anderson then. Cushy job, no charges or anything. Now, if any of us would have done that, we would have been convicted of a crime. But obvious, because he's a Labour leader, he gets off with it. They nearly even named a road after him when he died. He just couldn't believe what these people are like and how unaccountable they are. And it's one of the biggest things that I have a gripe for in my political career, where I am now in Oldham, across the country. And, it's not just councillors. We know MPs have lied. We know lords have lied. We know all these top police officers. We know they've covered up and lied and done things. And they've all gotten away with it. And, how can we trust the police? My first question time, Big John's first question time with Andy Burnham, I said, the police are a national disgrace and you might as well be sex offenders. That's what I said to two chief constables. And you know what, Nick? I meant every little bit of it, because they just failed us. Just failed us across the country. Sir Everard, the Oldham CSC, Rochdale, Telford, Rotherham, everywhere, the police have failed them girls. And I'm just not having it, Nick. It's wrong.
It is. I can make you one promise on this podcast now. These top civil servants or top politicians think they're untouchable. If I'm elected, they'll be touchable. Even if it's only through public opinion, even if I can't arrest them and jail them or sack them, even if I can't do those. Let's say I can't do that. I can ruin them in public opinion. I can make them stand down. I can make them run away with their tails in between their legs and never stand for public office again, or never be a civil servant again, because they will have baggage. There'll be a cloud over those people. I will make them touchable.
Oh, that sounds good. That sounds powerful and good. Powerful and good, Pat.
Yeah. I'll just last question for Nick, because we're coming up to the hour. But I'd just like to mention one thing in London, like regarding crime. In London, carjacking is becoming very out of control. We're in the chat there who had somebody close to him had his car taken off him at gunpoint and knife point the other day. So carjacking, is it a big problem in Manchester at the moment?
I don't think so, but surprisingly, a couple of weeks ago in Greater Manchester, there was a guy stabbed and had his car stolen, and his car was worth £300. And I was like, I thought they were stealing 30, 40 grand cars, but someone stole his car and stabbed him, and his car was worth £300. So those carjackings must be rare in Greater Manchester. I never hear about them. But stealing cars to order that are being shipped abroad in containers, that's an issue all over the country. And you just look at trying to get insurance now for Range Rovers. It's hard to get your insurance now if you've got a top of the range Range Rover, because they're being stolen all the time and being shipped abroad. So it is an issue across the country. But carjacking itself, I don't think so.
Okay. So are you a believer, Nick, in Jesus Christ, or are you atheist, or?
I believe in a God? No. I'm a cultural Christian because I live in a Christian country and the Western world is Christian. So a lot of my morals and understanding all come out of Christianity. The God question, I've done the articles on that. It's complicated. It'd be a 1 hour podcast for another day.
Okay, last question. What vote would you be happy with? I mean, let's all be honest. It's going to be very difficult for you to win this.
Yeah.
I'll pray for you that you win it. The Labour vote should collapse. We know it's collapsed, and we're going to get. Is Rochdale within the Greater Manchester?
Yeah.
So we're going to get an indication there, which will be good.
Yeah.
So what vote would you be happy with if you did just say you lost it, but you'd be happy with the vote you got?
So I've got 3 aims. My first aim is to get at least 5%, so I can get £5 back, because that was a lot of money to me that I'm actually putting on myself. So getting £5 back would mean a lot. If I can come second, because the Tory vote last time Tories got 19%, and that's dropping at every election. So if I can beat the Tories and come second, that would be a win for me.
Yeah.
And my third place would be if something happens now between now and the election in Greater Manchester that heavily damages Andy Burnham, then I've got a chance of winning then. So they're my 3 aims: get my deposit back, beat the Tories, and finally win. I wouldn't be in this if I wasn't fighting to win. It's a long shot. I understand it's a long shot, but I'm not fighting to come second. I'll take second, but I'm fighting to win.
Yeah, good on you.
I believe in the God of miracles, and I believe that the righteous are as bold as lions. When I stood in Liverpool for mayor and I stood for police commissioner, I made an impact because I was bold. You've got to be bold. You've got to get out there. You've got to interact with the public. You've got to debate with the public. You've got to have a public presence. But it's time for the people of Manchester to get off their knees, to break the habit of a lifetime and pointing the finger at the Mancunians. Stop voting Labour, because Labour don't represent you, Labour don't care about you, and Labour don't serve your interests. Look at different people, look at different voices, listen to what Nick's saying. The key issues: crime, the streets, housing. We need a new approach, and we need new people with new ideas. Thankfully, we've got Nick. He's got his experience. I hope he gets a great team around him. I hope he has a great campaign. I mean, we've got to link up the smaller parties, the dissenting voices. We've got to come together, and we've got to start to shake the establishment, because it's getting late in the day and things are getting really hard for our people now. Not just the cost of living crisis, the housing crisis, the immigration crisis.
Can I jump in there with one slight correction?
One slight correction. For the revolution in Manchester.
It is. I don't think the issue is trying to convert the people who vote Labour. Our issue, your issue and my issue, is trying to get the people who give up voting to vote.
Yeah.
Because that's 2/3 of the people in Greater Manchester. So I forget about the Labour voters. If you want to vote Labour, more fool you. It's the people who've said to themselves, what's the point? They're all crooked. They're all as bad as each other. None of them care about me. I'm going to stay home and watch Coronation Street because I don't care about any of them. That's what the elite want you to do. The elite want you to stay at home and keep your mouth shut. You're falling into their trap. They never wanted to give you the vote in the first place. And once they were forced to give you the vote, they then tricked you into believing your vote doesn't matter anyway. You need to stand up and be an English man, an English woman, and say, no, I'm going to represent me, and I'm going to represent my family, and I'm going to represent my neighborhood, because only I know the people in this area, and I'm going to vote for the best for them, not for the parties, not for anybody else. We need these people who have given up voting to get a kick up the backside and go, there's someone I can vote for. There's someone who sounds like me. There's someone who's got my best interests at heart. That's what I'm trying to tap into.
But let me finish, guys. So I'm the same. I feel the same that Nick was saying there, and I've always said that, trying to get people to vote who haven't voted for a while. But I just want to quickly go back to like being an independent and a councillor. Some people seem to think that, like, if they sort something out in their area, that it won't come back. And why do I say this? Is because we had a demo Saturday for Billy and PAG-UK in Rochdale, and someone on the thing said, Oldham councils aren't going to be there because it's nothing to do with Oldham. Unfortunately, Rochdale and Oldham, child sexual exploitation is interlinked like that. The girls were trafficked to and from Oldham to Rochdale. So don't think that ignoring Rochdale is, it's nothing to do with Oldham. It was. And when we go across the country, a lot of the areas that are next to each other, like Oldham and Rochdale, they're all linked. In Yorkshire, you've got Wakefield, Halifax. All these places are linked. So you might be able to think you can get rid of it out of Halifax, but if you don't do it across the country or nationally or in your constituency, you're never going to get rid of it. And that's the ignorance of some of the people. Oh no, it's only about Oldham. They don't even know how much the cases were linked, Nick. They don't understand that out of the Rochdale 9, 3 of them lived and worked in Oldham. They just don't get it. You know what I mean?
Pedophiles and criminals don't care about borders.
They don't, do they? They don't. They certainly don't. But anyway, thank you for a smashing hour, Nick. It's an honour. I know I'll be meeting you again, and you've got a good broad support here in Oldham. A lot of people like you, and a lot of people are really getting on board with what you say. And we do need to change the system. We do need to vote different people in, whether we like the position or not. As Nick said, he's going to do a referendum whether you want it or whether you want to be in Lancashire or not. I remember when Oldham, my postcode was Oldham, Lancashire. That's how I used to say it. But it's gone now, that. But in the description of the video, you can find Nick's link to his YouTube channel, to his X as well. Nick is also on TikTok, so you can find him there. But yeah, the links are in the description. And what I'm saying is, good luck, Nick. Good luck. I know you won't give in, and I'm guessing even if you don't win, you'll be running again in the future. And that's what we need, a bit more of a push. I like the thing you said about cultural Christian. That's how I should say about me. Christianity has been how I've been brought up. That's given me the morals, the kind of person, the empathy of the person I am now. It's not been anything else. It's been my Church of England background. And I tell this to the guys all the time. That's how I say it. And we even have a weekly Bible class that I'll attend quite regular. But, I'm not, I don't lie. I don't want to say that I am a practicing Christian when I'm not. But them values and my family is imprinted on me to make me the person I am today. A lot of people say I sound a lot like my dad did in the younger days, and he was a fighter for justice and wanted equality and all this kind of stuff. But thank you very much. Thank you to the chat, everyone in the chat. Sorry we didn't get round too much to you. Our awesome panel, the mighty Nick Buckley, the holy Paul Rimmer, and the awesome Pat McGinnis, and myself.
God be with you, Nick. We'll be praying for you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, guys. Thank you.
you.
Thank you.
Incredible John Lawrence.
Yeah, yes.